Now, earlier you said we can't build ourselves out of this situation, but how can we, or how can education, economic growth, and employment play a role in making things a more affordable to people here?
That's a great question that I wish more people in the legislature and more people that are in public policy would ask. And it's where I feel we've dropped the ball in the state of Connecticut. Again, let's go back to the very definition of affordable housing, right? It's being cost burden because I'm spending more than 30% of my take-home income on housing. Well, guess what? If you can help me and my family earn $20,000 more a year in my household, then maybe I'm not spending 30% of my household income because I'm now making more money. So all of a sudden, I'm not cost burdened. So we need to double down on our workforce development training programs. We need to work with households that are working and significantly work with what I call the underemployed. People who got skills that, is currently making $45,000 a year when they could be earning $65,000 to $70,000 a year. I promise you, we help individuals earn more within the city of Bridgeport. They're no longer cost burden, and they come off of the roles of those not being in that affordable housing spectrum, so to say. So if we help people do better with their take-home income, then we are improving the affordable housing crisis, because it's simply a factor of how much money I earn versus what I can afford. If we can help you afford more and give you more spending power, you are no longer in a crisis situation where your housing is not affordable.
Cost being a big factor in this crisis, and with the economy being the way it is today, almost in a inflation stage, and it's going to be like this probably for the next 2 or 3 years. So what is the short-term solution to this problem?
So that's a great question, and there's no right answer in terms of what the short-term solution to the crisis is, right? It's an all-hands-on-deck, multi-pronged approach, right? On the lower level, you have the housing authority and HUD dollars that come in to benefit taking care of those that are less fortunate, who are having difficulty getting adequate employment, right? On the higher end, there's funding that's available for landlords that meet specific guidelines to make necessary improvements to their existing properties. So I think another thing that goes unnoticed or untalked about is improving aging housing stock. When you have apartments that have been in the city for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, a lot of times it's not that people don't want to live there because they haven't been updated. But if we're able to update existing housing stock and put that those good homes back in the market, or if you drive around and you see a lot of boarded up homes, some homes have been in bad shape because previous owners were not able to keep up with the maintenance, or they have roofing problems or other things. There's funding available to the municipality that can be made available to landlords to fix and repair roofs, take care of old lead or other issues that are health hazards to tenants, and overall improve the quality of life for people that are renting. And because these subsidies kick in, it's not really raising the rent price, but it does make these apartments desirable. And I think a big reason why we have an affordable housing crisis in the city like Bridgeport is because there are too many areas in neighborhoods here, and what we call our distressed neighborhoods, that have not seen any real level of maintenance or upgrades, that they're undesirable. People don't want to move into them. So we need every available unit to be available. So a lot of rental units are going unrented here in the city of Bridgeport because they're just in poor condition. We need to address how we can get those properties in the hands of either small business investors, social impact investors, community leaders, or affordable housing nonprofits that can make the necessary upgrades to the housing and put it back on the market.
Okay, so let's talk about the impact of this housing crisis and the negative impact that it's having on housing besides people not being able to pay their rent.
Yeah, well, housing is probably the number one factor in dictating the future for our children. Understand what I'm saying is that our physical built form, our environment, where we grow up, where we choose to live, and how those living conditions are. If they're poor living conditions, chances are it leads to poverty. If we're having an affordable housing issue because we're not bringing home enough income, then you're just trying to deal with basic needs, right? That leads to anxiety, mental health issues. If you're living in poverty, your children are not getting the proper nutrition. That leads to instability in the education system, where our kids can't even focus in a classroom because of the experiences they're having at home, and it starts with where you live and your housing conditions. So the affordable housing crisis is such a massive crisis, what we call a wicked problem, because it's physically impacting the futures of our youth, the mental capacity of our elders, of seniors. It's impacting parents. It's leading to depression. It's leading to drug use, alcohol abuse, and other factors, because people want to escape the day-to-day pressure of knowing that they are not living under the best conditions. So if we put a proper roof over people's heads, we give them dignity, dignity and self-worth, that they belong here, right? You want that sense of belonging, of being in your neighborhood, right? You want to have the dignity of work. You want to feel that you're being properly compensated for the work that you do. You factor all those things in, you're now increasing self-resiliency, you're increasing self-awareness, you're increasing the capacity of someone to run their household. And in that, people feel good. You want to reduce crime, you improve our living conditions, right? Because people feel good about that. That increases civic pride, it increases the value of your community, it increases reducing blight, cleaning up your neighborhood. All of these things factored into this affordable housing crisis that we have. So something so simple as a basic human right of having a house over your head that you can afford is really at the root of the problem of poverty, crime, mental health, food insecurity, and all these other systemic injustices we've always witnessed here in our inner city neighborhoods.
So the benefit of having a strong housing market here in the city, how does that benefit the city as a whole in terms of socially, economically, and morale?
That's a great question. So civic pride is a big thing, right? We want to run around and say we love the city of Bridgeport, right? But loving the city of Bridgeport, the city has to love you back. There has to be factors that keep you here in the city. One factor is access to employment, access to transportation, access to resources, access to arts and entertainment, right? You want to be somewhere where you want to live. You want to be somewhere where you're proud to call home. So all of that factors into affordable housing and being able to have a solid job market. If you have a solid job market, the small businesses start to thrive. The small businesses thrive, they become employers because they got to meet the demand. And those are a lot of good paying entry-level jobs. Those are also great jobs for our youth. Teenagers and right out of high school, our young people that are going to college and trying to figure life out, because they are the future decision makers in all of this. So all of this is an ecosystem. We have an ecosystem, and housing is right in the middle. So if you have poor housing, then that's a reflection of you have a poor job market, you have non-thriving businesses. You have neighborhoods that are falling apart. You have an education system. If you don't have a solid housing and job market, then chances are your tax base is eroded. Well, your taxes control all your other civic resources, whether it's public safety in the form of police, emergency responders such as fire and other emergency services that are out here in the community, education. Bottom line is we want strong, healthy schools that benefit the kids. It's all a function of your neighborhood. Think about this, right? The schools in Greenwich, Fairfield, Weston, New Canaan, Darien tend to perform better. Why? Those kids are growing up in nice homes, nice households, without the anxiety, without the trauma that we experience in our inner cities. And it's reflective in a good housing market. They have good paying jobs. They have access to a good job market. And their taxes go into the education system. And now you have this, it's all one feeding ecosystem. So we need to address many problems here in the city of Bridgeport, but they're all connected. And one of the key connecting points at the root of the problem is solving the affordable housing crisis. And it's a multi-pronged approach, as we talked about before. But if we're not being realistic with ourselves, that housing, good housing, feeling comfortable in your housing and not having the anxiety of losing the roof over your head and being evicted because you can't pay your rent, goes a long way. And it's also said employers look for neighborhoods and cities that can accommodate growth, right? So you always hear terms like workforce housing, right? Your affordable housing, we have market rate housing, which is basically what the market can dictate, and workforce housing. Workforce housing is really just saying, hey, we have housing available at a rate based on the salaries that we have in the workforce within our neighborhood. So if an employer wants to come to Bridgeport and bring 1,000 jobs and employ 700 of those new jobs, Bridgeporters, they want them to live as close as possible to work as possible because that improves quality of life, right? But you gotta have the housing available, right? And you gotta be able to invest in those neighborhoods to make that workforce housing great. Because if that workforce housing is not great, ABC employee don't want to live in the city of Bridgeport. So it undermines that company coming here.